So did you know we're doing a short series, kind of snippets on random facts that you may or may not know about the Bible. Last week was more on the Bible codes and messages within the Bible. This week's is more on our archaeological side. And so they're kind of short, 5 to 10 minutes. This will be the last one for this month. And then if you guys like it, I'll come back next month and do a couple more. So let's get into it. So Mount of Olives, right? I want to kind of take you into that. If you haven't been to Jerusalem or you're not familiar with the Mount of Olives, the yellow circle on the left is Jerusalem, and to the east of that, separated by the Kidron Valley, is the Mount of Olives. And that's just relation, so you understand. Kidron Valley is actually the valley David talks about when he says, "Though I walk through the valley of shadow of death," because when Israel at the time was surrounded by enemies on three sides. But that's the relation there. So Mount of Olives, physical place there on the east of Jerusalem. So I want to get to Zechariah 14. So Zechariah 14 talks about the second coming of Jesus. Bible says, as in the days it was in Noah's time, so shall it be in the second coming. Meaning it's got to get really bad when it's going to be really bad when Jesus comes. You know, one world religion, one world currency, Christianity underground, right? And so if you're pre-rapture believer, you know, we're not there. But at the end times, Zechariah 14 says, "Behold, a day is coming for the Lord, when the spoil taken from you will be delivered in your midst." Now he's talking about Israel right now. He's referring to Israel at the end of time. "For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem," right? So the whole world is going to attack and go against Jerusalem to battle. "And the city shall be taken, and the houses plundered, and the women raped. Half the city shall go into exile, but the rest of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Then the Lord will go out and fight against those nations as when he fights on the day of battle." So remember, so Israel is now occupied by enemy combatants and enemies. "Then the Lord will go out and fight against those of the nations as he fights in the day of battle. On that day his feet shall stand on the Mount of Olives that lies before Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives shall be split in two from east to west by a very wide valley, so that one half of the mountain shall move northward, and the other half of the mountain shall move southward. And you will flee to the valley of my mountains, for the valley of my mountains shall reach to us all. And you shall flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. And the Lord my God will come, and all the holy ones with him." Right, so Zechariah verses 1 through 5. Now, if you look at Zechariah, right, it was written around 520 BC. Most scholars put it around 500, some 400, some a little later in the 500. So they all agree it's around 500 BC. I want to focus on Zechariah 14:4. "On that day his feet shall stand on the Mount of Olives that lies before Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives shall be split in two from east to west." So you looking at me, it'd be going this way, right? "And by a very wide valley." So the mountain's going to split. East to west, there's going to be a fault. There's going to be a crack. "Half the mountain shall move northward, half the mountain shall move southward." Right? Again, written about 500 BC. In 1964, right, a new hotel was going to be put up on the top of Jerusalem, on the top of Mount of Olives, overlooking Jerusalem. It was the Intercontinental Hotel. Right? They've renamed it since to the Seven Arches. So they did a geological study because they had to build the church. They needed to figure out where the stable ground is, and no one had really done a geological study on the Mount of Olives, and so they needed some, that's typical with construction. You got to understand the ground below. They found a fault line that runs through the Mount of Olives from east to west. Right? There's a big fault line that goes north to south through the Dead Sea, but there's a fault line that comes out and goes east to west through the Mount of Olives. And so they could not build the hotel where they originally wanted to build it. They had to move it southward, and they renamed it to the Seven Arches Hotel, right, if you look into that. Here's a map here. You have Jerusalem on the left, you have the Mount of Olives on the right, and you see that fault line there. Right? And going back to the verse, right, "And on that day his feet shall stand on the Mount of Olives, and it shall be split in two from east to west." So we have a matching fault line there, right? So that half the mountain moves northward, half the mountain moves southward. And you can see kind of from that, the fault line, right? That's going to split, right? And now there's archaeological evidence there, there's geological evidence there for that to happen. Here's a quick view. When I was there, I took the one on the right, but the one on the left I got online. So the one on the left is looking at the Mount of Olives from Israel, from the Jerusalem. You can see the hump there in the background. That's the Mount of Olives. So imagine that. Earthquake, split, those two separate, right? And on the right, that's looking at Jerusalem and the city from the Mount of Olives. All right, so one thing I want to point out too, if you look at Matthew, just talking about the second coming now. Go end it with this one. Matthew 24. Let me jump to that real quick. Matthew 24, verse 23. All right, so now Jesus is talking to the disciples, and he's talking about the second coming. He's talking about when he comes back. He says, "Then if anyone says to you, 'Look, here is Christ,' or 'There he is,' do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders, as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you beforehand. So if they say to you, 'Look, he is in the wilderness,' do not go out. If they say, 'Look, he's in the inner rooms,' do not believe it." Right? And this is the cool verse here. This kind of gives me a shiver. So imagine Israel is populated by enemies. Right? Some of the Israelites are there. So you have people for God and people against God there. Right? They're occupying the city. "For as lightning comes from the east, from the Mount of Olives, and shines as far as the west, so shall the coming of the Son of Man." So imagine Jesus is going to land on the Mount of Olives like lightning. It splits in two, right? And now you have Jesus walking like a shining light, a beacon of light walking towards Jerusalem, right? You are either trembling in your feet, terrified, or you are like vindicated and celebrating victory, right? And then all of us, right, those that believe in God will be behind him, right, going along with him, right? I don't know whether we're riding in the sky or walking on the ground or what, but, right? So that's just kind of the imagery. Imagine that, right? Jesus is going to split that mountain. He's had enough. He's like, "This is it. I'm done with this." And he comes back the second time, right? Not for first time he came not to convict the world, but the world through him might be saved. Second time he's bringing justice. So, but now you know that the Bible predicted the geological fault line that runs to the Mount of Olives almost 2,500 years before it was even discovered. And if you need references or want my information, I'll send it to you. Let me know. That's it. Thank you.